Hey guys, it's Callus here. Gonna do something cool and unique today that I've never done before and very well may not do again, but I hope it provides entertainment for you guys and gives some insight into my thought process, which I'd imagine is pretty different from other people's thought process. So I played, in air quotes, the Emerald Open number 3 this year, which for those of you unfamiliar is an ADV draft format tournament with a cash prize. I'm not going to go over all the rules of what draft is because it would just take too long and it would be really boring and repetitive for those of you who already know what it is. But these are the basic rules in front of you. And like I said, I'm not going to read all of them out loud because some of them are just ADV rules in general. Smogon clauses, no hacks items, uh, don't ghost. Those are things that I don't need to explain. But yeah, the general concept, we're going to look at this section here, draft rules, and this entire document for the Emerald Open, I'm going to link it in the description. So if you guys aren't familiar with this, or if you need some clarification and you want to check that out on your own, it's right below in the description, and I highly recommend that you pull it up and follow along. So basically the way that this works is they sort you into pods of 8, and interestingly, they specifically put you with people who are in the same time zone as you, which I think has pros and cons. It can make for kind of an imbalanced field depending on where the people are from that signed up and the quality of those people and where you live, yada yada. But it also could speed up the draft because I could tell you firsthand we had one of the slower draft pools and waiting, 4, 5, 6+ hours for somebody to make one pick is miserable. I was a jerk during the draft, and the second it got to the timer in the draft where someone could be skipped, I was setting alarms on my phone, and I was at work, and it's 2:37 p.m. I'm getting on Discord. There's my alarm. Skip, next guy, move it along. And I don't feel bad about it, man. These drafts take forever if you don't push. But anyhow, let's look at the draft board here. Now, this is going to look kind of overwhelming to people who have never seen this before. This is all part of the document, so again, you can go back and check this out on your own. I highly recommend following along. We'll scroll over to the right briefly because most of this stuff doesn't matter. If you're drafting the stuff that's in the 5 point and below, I mean, like Kecleon, maybe, but some of the stuff from 4 points down, we're looking at not fully evolved stuff. We're looking at Graveler, we're looking at Venomoth, we're looking at Sudowoodo. I mean, there's stuff in here that doesn't absolutely, completely, utterly blow. Octillery is vaguely usable. But by and large, it's all absolute junk. So we're going to not really concentrate on the 4-3-2-1. That's all kind of filler stuff. And arguably so is the 5-6 stuff. It begins at 7+. The highlight in the 7s is definitely Ampharos, which is a poke that, in my opinion, should definitely in this cost more than it does. When we get to the end of this series, I will certainly give you some overall thoughts about some of the numbers that I would change, which are a lot of them, to be frank. Ampharos is certainly an egregious one that should cost at least a point, probably 2 points, maybe even 3 points more than it actually does. But we're going to focus on this bigger stuff for now. So this stuff is the creme de la creme stuff. These are the things that you're really vying for and that you want to build your team around. These are different numbers than the ones that they used last time. So they adjust this every year. I don't know if it's based on the statistics of what did well or didn't do well in the previous year, or if it's kind of the consensus among the people who run this or the consensus among the community. I'm not exactly sure how they determine how it's adjusted, but these numbers are different from the previous year. And like I said, I don't necessarily agree with all of these numbers. I think there's still plenty of room for improvement. But this is what we were playing with. So according to them, Metagross, Raikou, and Salamence are the 3 best pokes. They're the most expensive. These are the best things you can have, according to them. And then we've got these, Skarmlax Tar. Then we got the 16. You're going to note that they have Chansey here at 15, below Blissey at 16, which, if you actually look at it, Chansey is actually not much of a statistical drop-off from Blissey. So it makes sense to me that if you think Blissey is this good, which I don't, by the way, but if you are to operate that Blissey is in the correct spot here at 16, then it makes sense that Chansey would be under it at 15 or certainly no lower than 14 because it really is not that much worse statistically or with what it does than Blissey. So anyhow, taking in all this information in front of you here, you have 90 points as it says here in the rules. So the points actually potentially do matter. You can hit a point where, oh shoot, even though it's available on the board, I can't afford to buy that thing that I wanted because I don't have enough points. You can also opt for trying to build just a really strong team of 6 and saying, screw it, I don't care about the last 2 pokes, let's just have the best 6 and beat people that way. Or you could try to have a more versatile team and you could intentionally pick things that are maybe not the most expensive thing available. Just try to get a little bang for your buck if you think something costs less than it should or what have you. And then later you can get, a 9-pointer, an 8-pointer, something that you might actually use rather than being stuck at the end with some stupid 3-pointer or whatever that you're never going to use. So there's a lot to think about, and this is my first time doing a draft. We don't get to pick our positions in the draft pool, and I actually was randomly assigned to the first pick, which I didn't really want, to be honest, and I think the first pick is not actually the optimal position for draft. It's never going to be awful, because obviously you're always going to get a very good poke, but because there are so many things that are kind of close, and because the wheel is so strong, I actually think I would prefer a mid-ish pick. I think like 4th or 5th is probably closer to where I would like to pick if it were up to me. But that's not the way that it fell. I got the first pick in my pod. So I'm going to go ahead and show you what we did. And this is where I need to specify exactly what happened here. So I signed up for this tournament originally. Jabba did not. And I did the full draft myself. And then I realized after, wait a minute, this is a Pokemon tournament. It involves scheduling and dealing with people's bullshit and headaches and stress. Fuck this. I don't want to play. So I was going to drop out. I didn't want to be a scumbag and drop out last minute or leave people hanging or whatever. This tournament does allow subs, and normally the host, Kaz, is just going to find a sub if he's able to take over your draft. But I thought my draft was pretty good, and I didn't just want some random idiot tagging in and blowing it. So I asked if I could find my own sub, and Kaz said that was fine. So I tagged Jabba in on my behalf. So the way that this worked throughout the tournament is I did the draft, and I also built the teams every single week, and Jabba played, obviously with no influence from me other than the teams and talking about it beforehand. We didn't ghost, we didn't cheat, obviously. So, I kind of have to give some spoilers here, unfortunately. There's no good way that I know to kind of take it pick by pick without way more video editing than I know how to do or want to do. So basically I'm going to show you how our draft ended up, and we're kind of going to go back and forth between what I was thinking at the time and what the other options were and why we picked what we picked. But like I said, there's no way to do it without unfortunately just showing you the full draft, so you're going to know beforehand by a little bit what we picked. So before I do that, I guess let's start with the first pick, right? Because like I said, I got the first overall pick, so I have the option of any of this stuff. I had never done draft before, like I said, so I have no clue. I kind of just took them at their word that they know what they're talking about, and these 3 probably really are the best pokes. Because it's really tempting for me to just take Skarm or just take Lax or something like that, but these guys are the 18s for a reason, so I was definitely going to pick one of those. The question is which one. So the first one that I ruled out was Salamence, because I thought that there was a reasonable chance that Dragonite could make it back to me. I didn't think that was a guarantee by any means, but I caught the kind of the whispers, if you will, of the community that a lot of people think Dragonite blows, which I vehemently disagree with. But I guess the consensus among the community is that it's not that good. A lot of people don't really value it, so I thought there was a reasonable chance that it would get back to me. I also thought that Salamence is not going to be as good in this format as, I don't know, I have a hard time with it being 18, and here's why. So not only can a lot of things learn Ice Beam or Blizzard or what have you, a lot of normals get it, and a lot of, I mean, anything can learn HP Ice, first of all, but a lot of normals have access to ice moves, and then the other thing is that a lot of things have access to moves like Thunder Wave specifically, Toxic a little bit less so, because Mence could still sweep you in theory while it's poison. But Thunder Wave is very crippling for Mence as well, and I think Ice Attacks and T-Wave are very common and very splashable, and they both really ruin Mence. Now, yes, I do know that Salamence gets Refresh. I don't think it's a great move. But in theory, you could run, depending on the matchup, something like DD, HP Flying, EQ, Refresh to at least get around the T-Wave problem. But even then, I mean, God, how bad does it feel when you sit there and you full para on what was an attempted Refresh turn? That's so bad. That's so aggravating. And between that and the fact that everything and their mother can just have Ice Beam, have Blizzard, have Icy Wind, have HP Ice, I thought that any person who plays against a Salamence, legit, like five of the opposing mons are going to have ice attacks. If I were to play against a Salamence, no matter what my team is, like five of my dudes, I would have like 2 T-Waves at least and 5 ice attacks, and I'm going to be able to neutralize the Mence. So I ruled him out because I wasn't convinced that it was going to be that great. It doesn't have a lot of the diversity that Dragonite has. Dragonite is bulkier, and Dragonite has crucial moves that Salamence does not have, like Heal Bell, like Focus Punch, like T-Wave, maybe even like Haze. But Heal Bell, T-Wave, and Focus Punch all seem very relevant to me. D-Knight to me seems more versatile, bulkier, and like it's always going to be good in any given matchup. So I actually think that D-Knight might be better in this than Mence, and certainly for a 3-point difference, I'll take my chances and see if I can get D-Knight on the way back. So ruling that out, Metagross and Raikou was a little bit more interesting. I think as a whole, I don't want to use the word underrate. Obviously, I don't think that I underrate it. Obviously, I think my ratings are correct, as we all do. But I would say that I rate Metagross lower than most ADV players, at least in the context of ADV OU. And that is certainly not to say that Metagross is bad. Let's not start that meme. That's me saying that I think Metagross is a mid to lower end top 10 Pokemon. I think Metagross is somewhere like 6, 7, 8 on the tier list, whereas there are many high-level ADVers that think it's like 1 or 2, that think it's like as good as T-Tower, that think it's like no worse than top 3, no matter what. Some combo of T-Tower, Scar, Meta is the top 3 in the minds of a lot of people, and that's not a mindset that I share. I think it's slow. And I think that's a huge thing in any competitive format. I hate being slower and just getting chunked on. I also think that it's vulnerable to plenty, whether it's just, again, very splashable Earthquake, very splashable Fire attacks, T-Wave. And I also hate having Meteor Mash as my primary attacking move. Steel is not a great attacking type, at least not in OU. Maybe in draft it's a little better because not everyone's going to have a bulky water, but Steel in OU is not a great attacking type. And I also really hate, this was the biggest thing that took me away from Metagross, so spoilers, I took Raikou. But the biggest thing that took me away from Metagross, especially in this format where basically one loss after the pools after just the initial pods. If you make it into the bracket stage, it's single elim from there all the way from top 64 to the finals. The biggest thing that took me away from meta is simply missing a Meteor Mash and losing the game. I would be so upset. I would be so disappointed. I'm in top 4, money's on the line. There we are, one-on-one. Okay, Meteor Mash. Oh, I missed. Sucks to suck. Well, you won. Good game. Like I just that sucks. I can't imagine. I'm in the camp now. ABR converted me completely. I've been here for a couple of years. I don't use Hydro Pump ever. I use Surf. I don't use Fire Blast. I use Flamethrower. I don't want to miss. I don't want to miss. And it's even worse in this format because in like something like CALLOUS Invitational, it's not only best of 3, but it's double elimination rather. So if you do miss, that's okay. You've got more games in this best of 3. You've got more games in the next set, even if you lost this set. This format is not like that. You lose one game, you're out of here. So I'm not willing to, Thunder, Blizzard, Fire Blast, Hydro Pump. In this case, Meteor Mash. I'm not doing it. I'm not missing Mash. I'm not missing 2 Mashes and losing the game because of that. I'm just not comfortable with it. So I thought the most steady and reliable option, and obviously the fastest among these options as well, was just going to be the Raikou. It only has the 1 type weakness, and I thought that that's something I could also play with. Since it's only weak to EQ, obviously I'll just draft a thing or 2 that resist or are immune to EQ, and I'll make my opponent play the 50-50 game every single time. If he's going to EQ me, he's going to risk my flying type coming in. Raikou also functions defensively, believe it or not. Going back to like an OU example again, a rest Raikou, for example, CM rest 2 attacks, for example, will wall something like a Gengar indefinitely. Now, obviously, OU is a little different because things like Dugtrio exist, but in this format, there are definitely times where Raikou can just be a special wall, but it also has the option, crucially, to just be a sweeper. Just be Calm Mind sub 2 attacks or whatever the set may be, and just get there. So I thought Raikou was very versatile, not that Metagross isn't, but it avoids the problems that I have with meta of it being slow and relying on Meteor Mash, because I'm never running HP Steel with meta. I'm not that level of in the loony bin just yet. So I'd have to rely on meta. I'm not comfortable with it. So I first picked Raikou. Now, unfortunately, I have to spoil the rest of the draft. So here is the draft pod. It says Jabba. They retroactively changed that, but it was me drafting it at the time. Jabba was not in the tournament. I'm not overly familiar with most of this pool. Rob Jr., obviously, is somebody that most of you guys should know. Longtime SPL player, World Cup player, just a good Pokemon player as a whole. No clue if he's done a draft before or not, but Rob is obviously someone who's good. The rest of these guys, with zero disrespect intended, and as it turned out, I think I actually had a pretty decent draft pool, one of the harder pools, because everybody seemed competent. There were no what the fuck are you doing kind of picks in this. Like, there was one dude in a different pool who first picked Nidoking, for example. Why aren't I in that pool, you fucking maroon? But no, this pool seemed pretty competent. One of these guys, foreshadowing, may matter later in the tournament. But for now, the only person that I've heard of is Rob. So we first picked the Raikou, as you can see on the screen, and then, weirdly, Salamence, even though it's supposedly one of the top 3 Mons, got passed over until 5th. So Raikou meta is the pretty standard 1-2. But then this guy takes T-Tar, this guy takes Skarm, and I don't hate either of those picks, by the way. I'm not sold that Salamence is as good as its point value says that it is. Then we go over to Lax, which is fine. This is actually a really, really good pick this late for Rob. I think it's great value. The fact that Celebi got back to him is pretty silly, too. So I think Rob had a very good start to this draft. This person takes Bliss. Zapgar is a pretty strong wheel, and it's pretty versatile. I don't know that I love these two together. I think I would have taken Zap or Gar plus Celebi, because I think Zap and Gar are going to have a lot of the same strengths and weaknesses. I think they're walled by the same stuff. Like, I think they're both largely walled by whatever, Registeel, Regice, Blissey, whatever your standard special wall is. So I don't know that I love them for that reason. The guy took Flygon later, so like maybe he was trying to build a Superman-esque team, or was like trying to force an archetype, or maybe he's like, hey, I might not end up with a spinner, which he didn't, so I don't want to be that Spikes vulnerable. I don't know what the guy's thought process was, but I personally, in his seat on the wheel, and I also don't like the Blissey pick, by the way, because I would have grabbed something else ahead of it. I don't think Blissey is amazing in this. But on the wheel for the Zapgar, I probably would have taken one of those plus Celebi. But as it stands, that he goes Zapgar, and then this guy takes Starmie, which is fine. And then Rob gets way too late Celebi. So Lax B from this seed is very, very good and not something that was supposed to happen. But that's really good. This Cloyster pick, I think, is not good. You have stuff like Swampert, Milotic, Dragonite still available, and you're taking Cloyster. I question that one quite a bit, and based on that and the fact that the dude then took 2 starters and Scizor, perhaps this guy Kirby here was a little on the newbier side, but as I said, as a whole, I think I got one of the stronger draft pools. Nobody seemed like an idiot. So I don't like the Cloyster pick. Jolteon Hariyama is interesting. I like both of those Mons just fine in this format, but again, I question, like, why aren't we taking Swampert? I guess you're afraid that anything could just have HP Grass, but, like, Milo's available too. Dragonite's available too. I don't know, man. These Mons are fine, but I don't think they're better than some of the stuff available. Gyarados Fortress, whatever. Swampert Arrow is stupidly good for being this late. So he second picks meta, first pick for him. Second pick overall, he takes meta, and then somehow Swampert Arrow gets all the way back to him. I mean, I had a shot at the Arrow, but what a ridiculous first 3. Metagross, Swampert, Arrow. This guy's having a good day. I don't know what the hell he's doing after that. It's kind of a mess, but his first 3 are real good. So yeah, I'm very, very happy with how it proceeds to me. So Milo Dragonite, I really didn't have to think about it very much. As far as the bulky waters that were left, Suicune is banned in this to begin with, so if you're looking for him or for Jirachi, both those pokes are banned, not even an option. So as far as the bulky waters that are left, I very much wanted to take Swampert, but the guy took it just in front of me, so I didn't have that option. So it's like Milo, and then stuff like Vaporeon that's definitely worse, and then it drops off a cliff. Then you're looking at Slowbro, Slowking, Blastoise. Those things do have use in this format. Slowbro, Slowking actually have really good move pools and are actually pretty threatening Pokemon, but they're not something that you want to take with your second pick. If I wanted them, I would get them later in the auction. And they're like kind of role players. They're bang for your buck Mons, whatever. But right now I'm building out the core of my team. So that was never going to be a pick here. My Milotic I thought was like a nice consistent Mon. And I thought it had reasonable synergy with Raikou. If you're going to be T-bolting into Milo, that could be a good way to get the Raikou in. And likewise, a lot of the things, unless it has like a choice band or whatever, a lot of the things that are going to be earthquaking at Raikou, Milo can switch into very safely. And I thought that it was just a very sturdy, safe Mon that was just always going to do what it does and be fine in any given matchup. I don't think it's ever going to be spectacular, but it's just boring and reliable. And I think in this format, when a lot of people are going to have, UUs or even NUs, just like really junk Pokemon, I think something as resilient as Milotic, keeping in mind that in most games sand isn't going to be there either, I think it's going to be really hard to kill. So I thought that was a very safe option, even if it's not a very flashy option. And then the Dragonite I was thrilled with. Dragonite, I think, is bonkers. And as you will see throughout the run, there's only 2 pokes that are realistically in contention for what was the best poke on our team throughout the entirety of the run. And Dragonite is definitely one of the 2 pokes that you could make an argument for. And I stand by my opinion that Dragonite is better than Salamence in this, but we'll get to that at the end. So this guy takes Arrow third, which is insane. Fori and Hari are fine picks. Blaziken, maybe, I mean, it is threatening in this with how diverse its move pool is, but again, it's on the slower side. But in this format, it's actually kind of sort of fast because, like, again, there's just a lot of shitty pokes, a lot of UUs or whatever. So, like, Blaziken is reasonably fast as far as this is concerned. I don't know about the Doug pick for Rob. It's never going to be bad. I would have to see exactly what else was available at the time. I know that I took this Metacham very late that I think I personally would prefer over Doug Trio in this. I think Doug Trio in this is probably not as good as it is in OU when there aren't always going to be things like T-Tar, like Celebi, like Jirachi. There's just always going to be targets in OU. And also in OU, you have the huge benefit of baton passing to it with Zapdos. Now, granted, he does have a Celebi that he could BP to, or BP with, rather. But I don't know. I think I personally would rather be. I think I personally would rather have my Celebi doing something else, and obviously it's gonna vary. It's gonna vary match to match what you want it to do. Celebi's pretty versatile. It could be defensive. It could be a special sweeper, what have you. But it probably shouldn't just be dry passing in this. So I don't know about the Doug Trio pick. Like I said, I bet it's worse in this format than it is in OU. I think with the benefit of hindsight, and again, who knows, maybe Rob's never done a draft before. I had never done a draft before. I think in this spot, something like a Metacham that I took, or yeah, maybe even like Flygon, just like a nice rock resist at this stage. Rock resist dry up pretty fast, and as you could see for Rob, that actually ended up being a fairly substantial issue given what he ended up with. So, the Duck Trio pick is like fine, but doesn't blow me away. And then we go over to Claydol, which I don't know if it's an exciting pick, but it might be a necessary pick. It's just one of those things where you probably need a spinner in this. So interestingly, bang for your buck, like I said, there's a lot of UU waters, Tentacruel, Blastoise, Kabutops. Those things all learn rapid spin, and they don't cost a lot points wise. So if you're really dead set that you need a spinner, you can go that route. I believe that Blastoise and Tentacruel have both actually won this tournament in previous years, so like they're clearly viable options. And they both have their own thing. Tentacruel can like Swords Dance up and stab Sludge Bomb you and stuff like that, or like Blastoise learns moves like Earthquake, Refresh, Roar. They both have their own utility. Anyhow, the Claydol pick I think is fine, but like the problem this guy has immediately with Blissey Starmie Doll is that his team is like overly do nothing. And as it turns out, he kind of suffers from that problem the whole way through. He does pick up Zard in the next round, but like other than that, what is your win condition? You can go like Off-Star or CM Bliss or whatever, but I think that this team is going to have a very hard time winning, especially against teams that are sturdy. Like my Milotic, for example, if I have to play this guy, which, by the way, you play in draft pods against anybody from anywhere in the tournament, so I might never play against any of these people. This is my draft pod, but that is completely separate from my battle pod, to be very clear. But hypothetically, if I were to play against this guy, I think he'd have a hard time killing me. I think even if Bliss were CM, I could just fling Toxic at it. I think that, I guess Off-Star is kind of a threat. I do have a Raikou. And then the Zard I can wall forever with my Lotic. I don't know. My team isn't a good example because it's just one guy. Obviously, there's a lot of people that he could play against. But I think against a lot of the sturdier squads that this dude would have a very hard time. I think he just didn't draft enough of things that are proactive, things that can help him win. So Lambo is going to take Flygon Registeel, which is a really good wheel. He's got a little Superman squad going. The Zapdos Gar, I already discussed how that wouldn't have been my personal pick, but if he's making that, and he did, then Flygon makes sense because he's got a little Superman thing going, and then Registeel is all the Reggies are underpriced in this. That's like one of the most egregious pricing mistakes in this entire thing. Regirock maybe isn't as insane. I think that clearly Ice and Steel are the best ones, but even then, like, Rock even should cost more than it does, but Steel and Ice are both nuts and should both cost like 14 or 15. Them being at 12 is silly Billy and is wrong. So like I said, this guy takes Zard, much needed because he needs offense. Heracross is interesting. At first I thought Rob was going for like a balance, was going for like Lax B, Mag, Fighter, Water kind of thing, just like a traditional OU-ish balance team. I'm less clear with these picks what he's going for, but I guess it's just kind of like just an offense, I guess. Don't love the Doug. Heracross seems fine in this situation. Again, I bet you Medicham is better in this than Heracross is. You have more diversity in your set probably. And crucially, just like the Metagross problem, you don't have to rely on stupid Megahorn with Heracross. Imagine missing Megahorn, losing the game, and being eliminated. This guy, like I said, probably the noob of the draft pod. There had to be something better than Sceptile here. Houndoom is an interesting pick. It's a good Mon, but again, did you need to take it here? Was there not something better available? Alakazam is interesting. This guy actually is a pretty threatening draft. I don't know how cohesive it is. The speed is kind of all over the place for Sablo here, but Alakazam, I mean, like, Alakazam with Calm Mind 3 attacks can just sweep certain teams. It's very, very, very fast. It hits like a truck. And you can adjust its coverage in any given match to whatever you need it to be. So you're never going to have to guess on what the Calm Mind 3 attacks are. It's just going to be Calm Mind any of the 3 attacks that you need it to be. And yeah, and it'll be a threat in any given matchup. Even against something like Blissey or Regice, Registeel, whatever, you can give it like Knockoff or Focus Punch if you want to go that way, or Trick or whatever. Alakazam, I think, is fine. This team, like I said, might lack cohesion, but he's got a threatening draft. He's having one of the better ones in our pod. This dude takes Electabuzz, which there's no way in hell that that's right. Again, like, reasonably threatening poke in this. It gets Cross Chop. It gets Cross Chop, Substitute, T-Wave, T-Bolt. I mean, it hits relatively hard. I get why it would be a good bang for your buck pick. So, like, I don't hate Electabuzz. I just hate it right now because there's better stuff available. Maybe he was feeling a little bit of a point crunch based on the expensiveness of his first 3 picks. 18, 15, 15 is a lot. And indeed, that did matter for me, as you can see. Maybe he thought that it was important to have a more diverse squad, a squad of 7 where you have like an actual substitute or whatever, and you're not stuck with junk on the bench. Again, don't know that I personally agree with that. I think this is early to take Electabuzz, and I think there probably would have been something better. Certainly, Regice, as it turns out, which I got way later, is insane and would have been a better pick. But as I learned throughout this tournament, the Regis are very undervalued. So when it got back to me, keeping in mind that I get 2 picks here. So at this time, I have Raikou, Milotic, Dragonite, because I'm the wheel by virtue of being either first or last. So I now get 2 picks here. I went with the Donphan. That one I knew I was going to take. Donphan I knew was automatic. I need the spinner. I need the rock resist. It just makes sense. I knew I was going to take the Donphan, but I wasn't sure about the other pick, and there were some other options available at this time. The Medicham, as it turns out, was very, very good throughout the run, and I have 0 regrets about making this pick. But at the time, that was the one I was most hesitant about. I knew I was going to take the Donphan, which turned out to be not that great, and I didn't know about the Medicham. But I wanted to take at least 1, if not 2 rock resists, and I wanted a little bit more offense. So I thought that it just fit a need, plain and simple. So Donphan is the spinner and a rock resist, and then Medicham is also kind of a rock resist. It's like half a rock resist, and it adds a little bit of offense to the team. So I did that. Hitmontop gets taken here, is a rapid spinner. Nidoking, I mean, again, this guy's team is really threatening. Fori is like kind of weird on it. it probably just functions almost like a bad Glalie on this team a lot of the time, where it spikes once or twice and then just clicks explosion. But this team is actually really threatening. He's got like 2 DD Mons. He's got Zam. Like there's just going to be CM3 attack a lot of the time. Nidoking is just going to be 4 attacks a lot of the time. Really versatile. It's a good squad. It is a good squad. I think this guy's having a good draft. Blastoise, I don't hate it. I like the Mon quite a bit. The question is whether or not he should have taken it here. And I don't hate it. Like I said, if he is feeling like the waters, the good spinners are going to start drying up, it's now or never. What happens if it's never going to make it back to me? I don't hate the pick here. I believe the Tentacruel was still available, so it was awkward to me. Where is Tentacruel? He's got to be somewhere. I'm not seeing him. Unfortunately, on a screenshot, I can't control F, so I'm not sure where Tentacruel ended up, but surely he got bought somewhere. But I don't hate the Blastoise pick. Scizor is reasonable in draft, actually. Scizor gets Morning Sun as like a bad recover if you want it to be bulky and utilize its like really, really good resistances. It's a normal resist, which is potentially really important in this. It has a bunch of other resistances as well, and only the one weakness. And then it can also be a sweeper. It can learn both Swords Dance and Agility if you wanted to. I think Scizor is probably 13, 14 is about where it belongs. Very good late round pick here. Pretty threatening poke. Vaporeon for Rob makes a lot of sense. It's one of the waters that organically supports an offensive strategy, a balanced strategy like the one that he's going for. Steelix doesn't make a ton of sense to me for this guy. He might be very paranoid about Raikou, which was a poke that dominated this tour last year, but like, you got Blissey Claydol, you're pretty damn covered. I don't know what Steelix adds here other than a third water weakness and another overly defensive, how do you actually win kind of Pokemon. So I don't like this pick for him. I think he needed something offensive. I don't know what Steelix adds here. His electrics are super covered between Blissey and Claydol, and it's too passive. This pick does not make sense to me. I don't think it was a good pick, but here we are. Good wheel here for Lambo, Glalie, Slowbro. We talked about Slowbro before. Diverse move pool. It functions as like a little bit of a bulky water and a pinch, but he's got bulky potentially, Flygon, and he's got Registeel, which is a great wall, so defensively he's pretty good. And then if he needs a third defensive Mon, depending on what he's against, Slowbro can play that role, but can also be Calm Mind 3 attacks. It learns physical stuff like Earthquake, Shadow Ball. It learns T-Wave. It learns Fire Blast. Slowbro is really diverse in this, and you can kind of tailor it to what you're playing against. So Lambo, I think, is having a nice little draft over here. Glalie is a nice bang for your buck pick, keeping in mind that Cloyster and Fori were already gone, and obviously Skarm was already gone. So it's probably, there's not that many spikers. It's like you could take Omastar, you could take Glalie, you could take Roselia. There's only so many choices, and I think Glalie plus Slowbro makes sense. So I think Lambo is clearly having one of the strongest drafts in the pool, as are we, as is Palkia. And Sablos is pretty good too. Like I said, I think I ended up in a pretty good draft pool. So moving it back to this guy, Shiftry, sure. Aggron for Rob, sure. It's the same issue we talked about before. It's why I don't like the Dugtrio Heracross pick. He is scrounging for a rock resist now, and you're taking Aggron that has 2 4X weaknesses in a format where opponents know beforehand what the Mons are that they're going to be playing against. Good luck with that. We move over here to Haunter. This guy's not good. Dusclops is an interesting choice. I guess he's kind of resigned to it. He's got like kind of a janky stall team here. Hariyama and Jolteon can play offensive roles. Houndoom is not a real win condition. It does hit pretty hard, but it's just walled forever by certain bulky waters, by things like Blissey, what have you. And it also doesn't have any way to boost itself. It doesn't have Calm Mind or any way to make itself hit harder or whatever. So Houndoom's not a real win condition. I think this guy's going to be relying very heavily on spikes. So Skarm Dusclops, I guess, is the plan. Dusclops, I guess, makes sense for him probably one of the better picks of what was left available at the time. But overall, I don't think this guy has had a fantastic draft, and it's just another team that I think is going to have a hard time actually winning. Sablo's pick makes sense. Venusaur, we're going to Value Town. I think Sablo has a nice little draft. The Fori is like a little awkward speed-wise, but that is really truly my only complaint. And even then, you could just EV it really aggressively. Like, you could just have the Fori be like Earthquake, Explosion, Hidden Power, Bug, Spikes. Don't even fucking spin. And just go super duper aggro with this team. I like it. Misdreavus doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but that's what he took. And then for me, the Regice here was a no-brainer. I'm really surprised that it made it this far back. When I said that there were two pokes throughout the run that might have been the MVP overall, you probably thought I meant Raikou, but clearly the two best pokes in this run were Dragonite and Regice for me, as you'll see in the games. Regice should cost legit like 14 to 15 points. A ton of teams just could never kill it, and it was a threat offensively, and it provided T-Wave support. Regice was insane for me, and the one thing I didn't like about my team was a lack of a special wall. Now, granted, now that my draft is effectively over, because obviously Caterpie and Magikarp are just LOL meme or whatever, but they don't mean anything. They don't contribute anything. They're never going to get used, obviously. So I just have a 6-mon draft. So let me talk about what my team doesn't have, because obviously you want to check all the boxes if you can. In a dream world, you have physical pressure, physical wall, special wall, spikes, spin, wish, all the key resistances, heal bell, so on and so forth, but there's just no way to have all of it. So what my team doesn't have, I do have heal bell. I do have good physical and special offense. I do have good physical and special defense. So I check a lot of the boxes, but what I don't have is Wish, which may or may not matter. I'm hoping that a lot of these pokes are bulky enough on their own, Milo having Recover, Regice and Raikou being viable rest users, the team as a whole being relatively sturdy, Medicham having Recover if it needs to. I'm hoping that this stuff is generally sturdy enough on its own to not need Wish, but I am missing that. And then something that very well could matter, depending on the matchup, if I play against something like a Tauros here, which Lambo took ridiculously late, good draft for him without a doubt, but I'm missing a normal resist, crucially. I did manage to pick up 2 rock resists, or at least what I would count as 1.5 rock resists, but I did not manage to pick up a normal resist along the way. So in theory, something like a Tauros, or like any kind of CB normal, a Kangaskhan, not a Slay King, because it's awful and you just click Protect, but a Tauros, a Kangaskhan, a Snorlax, anything along those lines, a hard-hitting CB normal might actually be really awkward for me to switch into. So I missed out on Wish, I missed out on a normal resist, and then the other thing is I don't have spikes. I don't know that you need spikes in this format. Obviously they help in any given format, but it just didn't work out that way. I just, the first pick, you're obviously going to take an 18-pointer. I got a very strong wheel with Milo Dragonite on the way back. The next pick, which is also a wheel of Donphan Medicham, I took what I needed, which is rock resists and a spinner. And then, yeah, Regice was also just what I needed. I just needed the special wall, and it turned out to be one of the 2 best pokes on the team. So I don't know where exactly I could have done this differently. Maybe I pick a Spiker over my Lotic, but like Skarm was super duper gone, and Cloyster was somehow gone too. So the only one that I could have picked in that position that's any good anyway would have been Fori. Would have been Raikou Fori Dragonite, which is... I don't know, man. It's hard to figure out where I would have put a Spiker. We'll see if that matters. I think my team between the Raikou, the Dragonite, which can be a special attacker, could be a Dragon Dancer, whatever, the Medicham, the Regice, which can go modest. Donphan actually has a pretty high attack stat. I think my team has the potential, if it needs to to hit pretty hard and like shouldn't really struggle to finish games. So I'm certainly going to keep that in mind on a going forward basis, depending on what I think I'm playing against or how aggro I need to be. But yeah, I guess it could be an issue where I don't have spikes, and are there going to be some matchups where I need that to break through and finish games? Overall, having not done a draft before, I was happy with the squad that I wound up with. I thought that it was pretty strong. I think that my 6 is going to be quite a bit better than the 6 for a lot of other people. If you just look, say, within my draft pool or whatever, which I think is a stronger pool, like if you just look at like the quality of the Mons of like me versus Palkia, me versus Venga Benga, me versus Kirby, my whole team is either OU or something, or BL, whatever they call it these days. UUBL, OUBL, UUBL. My whole team is either OU or BL. I have Mons that either are OU or at some point were OU all across the board. Whereas other teams are going to be stuck with crappy UUs and NUs and what have you. So I think quality of Mons-wise, I'm going to be in a good place. I don't have the flexibility, I guess I should add to the list of things I don't have. It's just always going to be the 6. Obviously, Caterpie and Magikarp are never going to see the light of day. So we'll see. I'm happy with my. I don't. It's hard to give a letter grade without having done it before, and obviously now I know the results and how we did and how far we went and all that. At the time, I thought it was like an A minus. I don't know. Like I said, I'll give my thoughts at the end about what I would give it now, but at the time, I was very happy. I thought it was like an A minus, and I thought that it was strong and that it had potential to make a run. But you don't know what you don't know, and having not done a draft before, it's just tough to say. This video turned out quite a bit longer than I thought it was going to be. The other videos are going to be shorter because it's just going to be the team and then one battle. But that is how we arrived on the team that we're going to be using for the entire duration of this tournament from here on out. Let me know what you guys, especially if you've played draft before, let me know what you guys think of the team and if you would have made any picks differently. And there are going to be quite a few more videos to come in this series, so I would appreciate if you enjoy this kind of content, which is quite a bit different than my usual, if you would hit the like button, and I'll see you in the next video.